Spark's Managing Director, Simon Muta, has joined the public debate over whether multinationals are paying enough tax. This is like Google and Facebook. He thinks they don't. Is he right? Should they pay a lot more than they are? Let's start with you, Andrew Bailey.
Yeah, no one wants to see foreign companies not paying tax in New Zealand. So we are trying to deal with it. Unfortunately, it's a very complicated issue, because the way that they structure their arrangements in New Zealand, as they do in virtually every other country, means you can minimise
how
tax.
can we better make it happen? Because last year Spark paid 140 million in tax. Google paid $250,000. So how fair is that?
So if you've got multinationals who've got businesses all around the world, what they do is they shift the profit to the lowest place. So what the Minister of Revenue has been doing is working with the OECD tax entities to make sure we've got common rules around all the world. Now, unfortunately, it takes time to do that.
Well, how long?
Eugenie. The OECD has been working on this since 1979. We need to introduce our own law, as the UK and Australia have
1979?
done. Yes. So, yes, we need to harmonise. But the fact that
So 37 years.
The Herald showed that there are about $500 million in tax revenue that should have gone into New Zealand. That could have paid for the salaries of 10,000 teachers.
Andrew,
imagine what our schools would be like if we had that extra teaching staff, if the government was prepared to move and change the law.
Yeah, but there's been legitimate rules, right? But where we've ended up with these smart companies like Google, where they don't have physical presences in countries, that's the difficulty we've got. And so, contrary to your view, the OECD is moving very quickly, because we've already got an incredibly robust tax system already, right? But
That's not what Sean said.
This is what...
That's not what the Sean Inquiry said.
It is. It did. It said the foreign companies have an appropriate tax rate. And I've got to tell you, most countries look at New Zealand and look enviously at our tax system because it's so simple, clear and unfair.
Google paid $3.3 billion in tax last year, $250,000 in this country. Yep. Is that fair,
No,
Carmel?
it's not fair. And, you know, the person who's earning $15.50 an hour is paying tax on every dollar. So... I mean,
well, that's a good point. Let's come to Andrew, because, people watching this right now, having a quiet beer, just going, holy hell, I'm a hard-working New Zealander.
But we agree
with
that.
So what do we do? 1979.
No one in New
outrageous.
Zealand, no one in New Zealand, neither the National Party, no one wants to see foreigners benefiting from New Zealanders.
But they're so slow to move on this.
We want them...
So slow to move on this. So they know that New Zealanders, because their polling would have shown them this, New Zealanders are saying this is an issue. So they're like, OK, we must do something. But actually, we're not in a hurry to address this.
Finance and expenditure.
OK, we'll come back to you, but let's go to the Ali Akram.
Robin Oliver, you're a tax advisor. What are the practicalities of getting Google to pay some more tax in this country?
Well, sorry to disappoint everybody, but you have to generate income here before you pay tax. Income means capital and people. And Google has very few people or investment in New Zealand. We therefore get very little tax. And we have the same thing with our farmers. They sell stuff to China, massive amount of milk. They pay tax in New Zealand. Do we want them to pay tax in China? The tax in New Zealand funds our hospitals, schools, police force. That's what we want. We don't want it going to China.
So we can essentially go and whistle on this?
Well, it'd be lovely if we could just grab a pile of money from Googles and Apples and so forth, but don't be careful what you wish for, because we have a multinational too called Fonterra. It pays tax in New Zealand, and we want to keep that.
It has been a big week for tax. What did you make of the Schuon report?
As expected, there was... Sorry about TV1, but there's nothing in all the revelations. I mean, there's nothing there. There's no illicit activity. There's no funny business they could find, and we can improve our information disclosure rules. Fine.
So when do you get to be a tax haven? Well, apparently we're not a tax haven. When do you meet the standards to be declared an official tax haven?
Well, you all remember the Cook Islands, the old days. The wine box, when you have secrecy, when you can be prosecuted in the old days of the Cook Islands for divulging any information. And Switzerland used to have Swiss bank accounts, which was secret. It was illegal to disclose them. We've never had any of that.
So how would you describe what we do? Sort of like just loose-handed, light touch? What would you say?
I would say we have a family wealth management industry in New Zealand which looks after the family wealth of unstable countries like Latin America. I mean, part of the Panama Papers showed that there was someone high up in Venezuela who had their funds in New Zealand. Well, if I was in Venezuela, I'd have my funds in New Zealand. And that's the point. And
so we're running a humanitarian outfit. All of those emails that get through and spam. These are the good stories, yeah.
We're running a business, as you'd expect us to do. We've got to make money in the international world. We can't just hop off it. And it's a legitimate business looking after family interests. They are wealthy. I know that's not popular, but they are. You know, there's no crime in being wealthy.
We'll go back to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robin
Round
Oliver.
of applause to Robin Oliver. Very, very interesting there. So is that the case? I mean, Andrew Bailey, are we simply running a altruistic, a humanitarian financial management country?
Not that I know, but what we do want to do is make sure we get the fair share of tax from everyone, and including foreign investors coming into New Zealand. So you're right, it's complicated. That's, as the tax expert just said there, it is a complicated issue. We want to solve it, but we've already got very good rules in New Zealand.
All right, Eugenie, be careful what you wish for. That's what Robin said. I mean, for example, China could charge Fonterra an income tax.
Well, obviously, our changes to the law need to be in harmony with what's happening internationally. But when you've got these multinationals generating $10 billion in sales and paying $1.8 million in tax, and yet we all pay tax fairly, they've got to play fair too.
Oh, I just want to go to the audience on this. Does this send the wrong message to, I don't know, ordinary New Zealanders who, as Carmel said, wage earners who, bring home sort of, whatever they do? Ali?
You look like a man of the world.
I suppose, yeah.
When you hear that Google's not paying quite as much tax as they should be, what do you think?
I think it's just a really difficult problem to solve. With the income shifting and things like, it's impossible, yeah.
When you're filling in your tax return, and do you ever think of those who might be doing far, far, far better than you do, who are paying less tax?
Yeah, I suppose. But then I'm not Google, so, I don't have that sort of money around.
Back to you, Wallace.
Very, very good. And what do you make? I mean, just final thoughts, Carmel. I mean, what do you think the government could do more on this? As Eugenie suggested, it's been a long process. But if you're in power in the next year, what would you do?
We're going to be reviewing our tax legislation domestically, but also looking at how we can tighten up with the support of the OECD internationally. Every person who's operating in this country should be paying their fair share of tax, and we need to make sure that that's happening.